because of the huge pandemic that the world is going through, the inequalities that have multiplied, and also because of huge lockdown that almost all the major economies have faced. And as a result, the GDP has shrinked all across. Trade has, in a way, been squeezed, and so are the resource flows. And this has pushed countries in a big quagmire where they are finding it very difficult to rediscover themselves. So it has come at a time when the world is facing through a major challenge. So at this point, when we are rediscovering BRICS, it is important that India, Brazil, and South Africa, the three major economies within the BRICS, are so much different from Russia and China, which are in a different league altogether when it comes to the global governance. China has its own stage, so we should not confuse that we are in the BRICS, so all are at par with each other. We have common but differentiated responsibilities, CBTR, and we also have a very different status in the global scenario. So the amount of energies that are sort of coming in from China in terms of global governance, the kind of energies that are coming from Russia in terms of its clout and also in terms of their role, Brazil, India, and South Africa are somewhere below. So we have to see how a coherence can come in. And I think it would be important because Brazil is a regional leader in the American region. And Brazil has the heft and the gravitas to lead the region. So is India in South Asia, and so is South Africa in the African region. So we are regional leaders in that context. We are also playing increasingly global role. Brazil and Brazil's development cooperation and Brazil's connect with Africa is very important. The role Brazil is playing in norm setting and has demonstrated through Brazil's own social security programs have their own huge relevance. And so is India's role in the global norm setting, in reinstating the moral compass and bringing in inclusion, and also providing the new traction to economic growth. I think we have to see that we play that role within BRICS. The post-pandemic situation is also in a way providing huge challenge in terms of how developing countries can really strengthen their programs on SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And Brazil played an important role in the negotiation of SDGs by establishing what was called as Technology Facilitation Mechanism, TFM, and Paulo knows about it. The role that Brazil played in establishment of TFM. India and Brazil together floated this proposal in 2012, and 2015, the global community accepted TFM as an idea, and it has come up as a reality. There are pilot projects already going on since Japanese presidency of G20, and some of your researchers are working with us at RIS very closely, Andre and many others with whom TFM is being explored all across. So I think it is important in terms of the inequalities that we are seeing with vaccinations and access, equity, and inclusion that is important. AEI that is important for vaccine, I think is important. So SDG backdrop I gave largely in terms of that. BRICS also has to play an important role when it comes to climate change, particularly for COP26. Brazil and India and South Africa are very much trying to be on track when it comes to our Paris commitments. We have come together as a force to see how the forthcoming COP26 sets out the agenda and how we bring in SCP, how we bring in sustainable consumption and production. Brazil, India, and South Africa have common agenda when it comes to sustainable production and consumption. So that's my third point in terms of how the BRICS agenda can take us forward. Brazil has also played an important role in health management, India with the vaccine program, and South Africa with their new found discoveries in the biomedical sciences is going to take us forward. So BRICS at 15 is going to be extremely important when it comes to global governance. And there again, I would have 4 points to make. The first is rejigging the multilateralism.
One general point that I would make is that BRICS, it has to be understood as essentially an intergovernmental coalition. Why do I say that? Because as long as and as far as the governments of the BRICS are willing to push the issues forward, are willing to work together, are willing to be really representatives of the global South in the different multilateral arenas, it works. As soon as the governments of the BRICS want to challenge the US and Western hegemony in the IMF or create a new financial institution, they did. But it has limits. It has limits as far as there are changes in governments, there are other coalitions, there is a new general overall context of course, the pandemic, but mostly the challenges that the US is posing to China. So I think there is a lot of limitations even in the scope of and possibilities of cooperation among the BRICS, because it is still essentially this very intergovernmental coalition. It's not far as, of course, not a regional integration or other sorts of common integration. I do see a lot of challenge in the big weight and the role that China has played so far. I think if China is not willing to push the BRICS forward and to keep the new development bank going, I think the other BRICS will have a lot of difficulties. I do see challenges on the ways that many of the BRICS countries individually and the BRICS multinational corporations have been acting in the other places of the global South. So in Africa and Latin America, in terms of raw materials, minerals, and other sorts of natural resources exploitations. So in many occasions, the BRICS and BRICS countries have played a role of exploitation of natural resources and labor power. So to say, reproducing what we've already know from Western powers. But there's a lot of potentials for cooperations in the areas that Dr. Sachin has already mentioned, climate change, health, energy, I would say. One of last point, I don't want to take too much of the time, but two things that I think it's important. One, in the context of the pandemic, unfortunately, I would say, the diplomatic high-level channels that the BRICS have built along these 10 years, be that multilateral or bilateral, have not really worked in the period of a big crisis. I would say that particularly in the diplomatic and high-level channels between Brazil and China, as COSBAN and others, but I see also the external tensions to the BRICS really hitting hard the group. So the US-China rivalry, competition, but also let's not underplay that. The Russia-EU rivalry, when the EU didn't accept the Russian vaccine and questioned the Chinese and Russian vaccines, they're intensifying this rivalry, and we are not talking enough about it. I say also a big source of tension is the reapproachment of India to the US in terms of security, and also Brazil, but Brazil is in another level than India in this place. And I see as a big challenge to the BRICS now, as an external challenge, the huge asymmetries between our countries and between Western powers and poor and middle income powers, which will be now even bigger after the pandemic.
for BRICS to go forward, we are the most stabilizing group that has the potential to contribute for global stability. Brazil in the zone of sphere, which is very important for Americas, and India, which is so much important for so many other settings that are important. Both Brazil and India have good connect in Africa, and we are also strengthening our bilateral understanding. So we have to continue to engage with China. There is no way out of the situation. And China is also realizing that by continuously raising or escalating the tensions between India and China, or with other powers, as we see in case of South China Sea, or we see with Taiwan, or in other regions, including Tibet, I think the issues are becoming far more dense, cluttered, and tense. The idea of global governance requires maritime stability, maritime security, and also the question of the maritime expansion. And that's where IPSAMAR and other exercises are having this stabilizing impact that is needed. It is also important how Brazil and India engage with EU, and EU becomes an important fulcrum here. Not just Germany, but the whole of EU has to play an extremely constructive role. The disengagement that EU has done on several fronts, but the engagement that EU has done in terms of investment agreement with China, I think are some of the indications as to how we are going to go forward.